Yeah, the first question is from Eddie. Eddie, would you like to ask the question?
Yes, thanks, Selena. Yeah, thanks, Michael, for the talk. It was really helpful, and thanks for all your work. So basically, I guess my question's around varying degrees of success with the practice, and kind of split up into two aspects, and I don't think it will be too hard to answer. But the first aspect is, going within. I've been practicing it for a few weeks now, and I've seen a big, I've seen success with it, and what I was wanting to ask is, do you think Ramana's saying, take the attention inwards, self-investigate, but do you think he's also saying, outwards, Maya is always going to happen, regardless of whether you are liberated or not or whatever? It's always going to happen. So it's always going to have its polar opposites of good and bad. And maybe part of that success of going inwards is to know that, you can't have an opinion on the good and bad, and that the ego, I, mind depends on that good and bad. So a way to help dissolve it is to remove that polar opposite it wants to grab onto. And the second part of the question, do you think Ramana, even his devotees or people that came to see him or anything, any part of his experience, he knew that people doing his practice would have varying degrees of success, and he would know that, it's come back to his we're not in control of anything, but maybe we as devotees or people who practice, we should realize that maybe we're not going to get to the guru level. We're going to get our experience, and we could just be happy with the success we get. I'm very happy with just reducing my suffering, 80%, 60%, 50%, whatever. And suppose, he knew we were all complete already anyway, and that was it. I'm sorry if my question's a bit too long. So,
sorry, I didn't hear the first part. I came a bit late. I didn't hear the first part of your question.
Okay, yeah. So I was just saying, when you have, so when we're practicing going within, we can have varying degrees of success. And do you think Ramana was saying, what you turn your attention within, but also you are realizing that the Maya will always be there, and it's always going to have its polar opposites, good and bad. And, maybe he's saying as well, you can have the attention on the God or Ramana in your heart, and I find that very useful. But maybe he's saying also, the ego, I, mind depends on grasping onto good or bad. So maybe, as he's saying, also just try to let go of opinion of what the Maya is doing.
Yes. According to Bhagavan, Maya is nothing but the mind or ego. That is what the mind essentially is ego. So ultimately, Maya is nothing but ego. So long as we rise as ego, there will be a world, there will be pairs of opposites, good and bad, existence and non-existence, knowledge and ignorance, life and death, bondage and liberation. All these seem to be real, so long as we rise as ego, because the very nature of ego is to project. all these things. None of these things have any existence independent of ego. So long as we are aware of, as Bhagavan says, the world is nothing but thought. So long as we're aware of the world, so long as we're aware of anything other than our thought, ourselves, what those phenomena, they're all nothing but mental fabrications or thoughts, mental phenomena. But to whom do they all appear? They all appear only to me. To me here means the ego. So we need to, rather than attaching any, we need to be unconcerned about all these things. Bhagavan said we need to cling to ourselves so keenly that we thereby give no room to rising of other thoughts. But we need to understand where lies the emphasis there. The emphasis lies on clinging so keenly to ourselves. Our aim is not just to get rid of thoughts, because we get rid of thoughts, we get rid of the world, we get rid of good and bad and everything when we fall asleep every night. But ego isn't thereby annihilated. So we need to get rid of thoughts by clinging to ourselves. In other words, in one place, in the 6th paragraph of Nāṉ Ār, Bhagavan says, what does it matter however many thoughts arise, what? Meaning what there means so what? What's it matter? So he's indicating to us we should not be concerned about thoughts. We should not be concerned about the world. We should not be concerned about anything. The only thing we should be concerned about is trying to hold on to ourselves. If we hold on to ourselves, everything else will drop off. You mentioned good and bad. Good and bad is a pair of opposites. In the in verse 9 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, Bhagavan refers to those pairs of opposites. I'll just get that verse because it's a very, very important verse and particularly relevant in this context. What he says is, in English, it's usually translated as dyads and triads, but the dyads and triads in this case has a very specific meaning. Dyads means pairs of opposites, like good and bad, existence and non-existence, life and death, awareness and non-awareness, knowledge and ignorance, happiness and unhappiness, pleasure and pain, liberation and bondage. All these are good and bad. All these are pairs of opposites. And that's what is referred to here as dyads. The word he used in Tamil is irritagal. The technical term in Sanskrit is dvandva. That means for pairs of opposites. Irritagal simply means pairs, but in this context, it means pairs of opposites. And the other term he uses that is usually translated as triads is mupadigal, which is a Tamil form of the Sanskrit term triputi, which again it's a technical term. It means the three factors of transitive knowledge. That is, when we know anything other than ourselves, there are three factors involved. Ourself as the knower, what we know, and the means by which we know it. So I see a PC. The PC is an object known by me. The means by which I know it is seeing. Who is the seer? I am the seer. So I am the knower. So these three. And this applies not only to what we know by sensory perception. There are many means of knowledge. We know some things by inference. We don't know it directly, but we infer it. Whether deductively or inductively, we may infer so many things. Most of science is inferential knowledge. And most of our day-to-day knowledge is inferential. We infer things. We also, most of the things we know by hearsay, we trust the testimony. We believe in testimony. For example, we read in the newspapers that there's a pandemic, a COVID pandemic, and so many people are dying, and there's second wave, third wave, and how it's affecting how there are new waves, and it varies from country to country. And some countries, they're vaccinating more people. Some countries can't afford the vaccines, or there are logistic obstacles to vaccinating all people. So many things. All these things, how do we know these things? Because we read them in the newspaper, we see them on the television, in the news and everything. All these are things that we don't have direct experience of, but we know on trust. Likewise, all history, we all know that certain events in history, the Second World War, First World War, Napoleonic Wars, we learn about these things in history books. We've got no direct knowledge of these things. We take these things on trust because we believe they're from reliable sources. So likewise, most scientific knowledge is, even the scientists, most of their knowledge of science is based on trust. Because other scientists, they don't test every scientific finding to verify for themselves. You can't do so. So you have to take it on trust. So there are so many means by which we know things. But whatever be the means by which we know it, and whatever be the thing that we know, that nothing can be known without a means of knowing it. And there cannot be any means of knowing without a knower. So what is important, that is a fundamental factor of these three, is the knower. The knower is ourself as ego. So Bhagavan says in that verse, dyads and triads exist always holding one thing. What is that one thing? He himself explained it is ego. That is, the dyads, the good and bad, existence, non-existence, life and death, all these are things that are known by us. So nothing can be known without a knower. So the dyads depend on ourselves as ego, as a knower of them. Likewise, the triads, everything that is known and all the means of knowing them all depend only on the knower. So the one thing that the dyads and triads exist always holding. Holding here means depending upon, is ego, the knower of them. So according to Bhagavan, everything that we know exists, depends for its semi-existence upon the semi-existence of ourself as ego. Yeah, this verse is one place where he points it out. He points it out in so many ways in so many other verses. And then he says in the second sentence, if one sees within the mind what that one thing is, they will slip off. That means if we investigate ego within ourselves, look within to see what is this one thing on which everything else depends, then in other words, all objects depend upon the subject. What is this subject? Who is the one who knows all these things? To whom do all these things appear? If we investigate that, the nature of ego is that we rise, stand, and flourish as ego by attending to things other than ourselves. If instead of attending to other things, if we try to attend to ourselves, ego then has nothing to hold on to, so it subsides and dissolves back into its source. Since everything else, all the dyads and triads and everything depends on ego, when ego subsides, they will slip off. That's why he says, if one sees within the mind what that one thing is, they will slip off. In other words, if we investigate what this ego is, ego will subside and everything else will disappear along with it. And then he concludes by saying, only those who have seen the reality. That means only those who have seen the non-existence of ego have seen the reality. They will not be confused. So according to Bhagavan, everything depends upon ourself as ego. If we investigate ourself, we will disappear, that is, ego will disappear. What will then remain is what we actually are, that is the fundamental awareness I am. And when ego disappears, everything else disappears along with it. What is ego? Ego, as Bhagavan said, is nothing but that false awareness. I am this person. I am Eddie. Eddie is the name of a body, a person, consisting of body, mind, 5 sheets, as Bhagavan says. It consists of a body, a life that's animating that body, mind, intellect, and will. These 5 make up the person called Eddie. Now you're aware of yourself as I am Eddie. That is a false awareness of yourself. What you actually are is only the fundamental awareness of your own existence. I am. That alone is what is real. So now you're aware of yourself as I am Eddie. But if you investigate yourself to see what you actually are, you need to let go of Eddie, because Eddie is, after all, just an object. That all these 5 sheaths that make up Eddie, the body, the life, the breathing, a heartbeat and everything, the mind consisting of thoughts, perceptions, memory, and so on, the intellect with its functioning of judging and discriminating and reasoning, these are all things known by us. And the will consists of, in seed form, it consists of vasana, the inclinations to attend to things other than ourselves, which are the seeds that give rise to likes, dislikes, desires, attachment. All these make up the will. All these are objects perceived by us. So we cannot be any of these things because they're objects perceived by us. So when we investigate ourselves, we are leaving aside these 5 sheaths and trying to investigate who is that I who is aware of itself as I am Eddie. When we do so, Eddie will drop off and you will be aware of yourself as just I am. When you're aware of yourself as just I am, ego is thereby destroyed and the whole of Maya is destroyed along with it. Even to say it's destroyed is not strictly speaking correct. Something must exist in order to be destroyed. When we investigate ego, we find there is no such thing as ego at all. There never was any ego. Like if you see a rope and mistake it to be a snake, Bhagavan will assure you, no, it's not a snake, it's just a rope. But still, to you, it looks very much like a snake. How can you dispel your fear? Bhagavan will say, look at it carefully and see for yourself. If you look at it carefully enough, you see, oh, it's just a rope. As soon as you see it's just a rope, you know that the snake never existed. Likewise, when we investigate ego, we will find ego never existed. Since ego never existed, none of these good or bad or existence or non-existence or bondage or liberation, none of these existed. What exists is only I am. Does that adequately answer your question?
Yeah, that's really great, and thanks.
There was one other thing you were saying that I caught, that is earlier. You were saying something about reaching the level of Bhagavan or reaching the level of Guru.
Oh yeah, I was just so say, like Bhagavan met people or he had devotees and everyone would have that varying level of success.
Yeah.
So I guess, do you think Bhagavan actually knew there'd be that difference of experience? He kind of understood that not everyone's destined to be like have his experience or have like have a completely to have his experience or maybe another guru's experience or whatever.
Yeah.
And then maybe we'll get hung up too much on maybe getting perfection when we could just be happy with reducing suffering 50%, 80% or something. That's something that I've, like maybe we've got too much of a goal instead of the journey, or and everything's already complete anyway.
Okay, there are various things here. Firstly, what you say is certainly correct. When you're traveling on a journey, you can travel only from the point where you are now. So what we should be concerned about is going in the right direction. The right direction is to go within. When we will reach our goal, need not concern us now. What we should be focusing on is this practice. That if we are thinking of the goal, as soon as we think of a goal, we think of it as something other than ourselves, something we don't have now, but we're going to achieve in future. There is no such goal. What we are seeking to achieve is what we already are. So there is actually no distance to cover. The distance seems to exist only from the perspective of ego. We seem to be on a journey. So what we need to focus on now, Bhagavan has given us a very simple practice, turning our attention within. That's what we need to do. Whenever our attention moves away from ourselves towards other things, in other words, whenever anything else appears, to whom does it appear? We turn our attention back towards ourselves. We need to be focusing on the practice here and now. When is the best place to practice, the best time and the best place to practice this? Here and now. If you think, I must set aside 20 minutes in the evening and 20 minutes in the morning to do this, when it comes to those 20 minutes, you'll be sitting there thinking about, oh, next time I must do it more. We shouldn't be thinking about the future. We should be thinking only about who am I here and now. So but for the practice to be sufficiently focused, we need to be here and now in the present moment. It's only in the present moment that we can know ourselves. We cannot know ourselves in the future because the future is out of our hands. What am I now? So we need to be focusing on the future. We shouldn't be, yes, there is a goal at the end, but the goal is not anything that we're going to achieve. Truly speaking, Bhagavan often used to say, there's nothing new to be attained. Anything that you attain newly, you will lose. Because whatever comes has to go. It's not real. We are seeking what is real, what is ever present. So if this, what is called the achievement of the attainment of jnana is not actually gaining anything, it is losing everything. When we lose ego, what remains is jnana, which was ever present. Because jnana is even now, jnana is never something unknown. Jnana is only that fundamental awareness I am. We always know that. But now we know it as, though we always know I am, we know ourselves as something other than what we are. Because instead of knowing yourself as just I am, you know yourself as I am Eddie. So your aim is not to gain something, it is to lose everything. And when everything else is lost, including Eddie, and including the I that says I am Eddie, that is the real problem. That is ego. Eddie is not ego. The I that says I am Eddie is ego. When ego is lost, everything else is lost, and what remains is what we always actually are. That is jnana. So it's important to be focusing on the here and now rather than thinking about some goal. Am I going to get liberation in this lifetime, or is it going to be in some future lifetime? Do I have to go on doing this sadhana for another 100 lifetimes or something? We shouldn't even be thinking this. It doesn't matter. All we can do is in this moment, we can try to attend to ourselves. And if we are that, we need to be so focused and so one-pointed. But that's our only concern. Who am I here and now? So that's part of the answer to your question. The other part is, there's another part is, it is not a matter of destiny. Destiny has got nothing to do with this. Destiny is the fruit of our past karmas that have been selected for us to experience in this lifetime. The fruit of past karmas we experience in the form of objective experiences, which come in the form of pleasure and pain. These are the fruits of our karma. Knowing ourselves can never be the fruit of our karma, because karmas are all finite. How can a finite karma give an infinite result? Our own real nature, which is what we are seeking to know, is infinite, so it can never be the fruit of karma. So this has nothing to do with destiny. Bhagavan often used to say, Bhakti is the mother of jnana. Bhakti means love. We must have great love to surrender ourselves, to give ourselves up entirely, because we cannot investigate ourselves without being willing to give up ourselves, because to the extent to which we attend to ourselves, we are thereby letting go of everything other than ourselves. And by letting go of everything else, we're bringing about the dissolution of ego, whose nature is to always be holding on to other things. So we have to have, that is, this path of self-investigation entails complete surrender. And we will not surrender ourselves without great love. So love is the key. So it is not to do with destiny, it's to do with our will, our love Do we have love to surrender ourselves completely? If we have that, if we have sufficient love, we can attain it here and now. The only problem is we don't yet have sufficient love. We still have too much liking because of our avivaka, as Bhagavan says in this paragraph. We still think we're going to get happiness from the things of the world. So we're still allowing our mind to go outwards, away from ourselves. So this is nothing to do with destiny. It's all a matter of how much love we have. And we can cultivate that love, the required love, only by putting this into practice, by following this simple practice that Bhagavan has taught us of repeatedly turning our attention within. The more we do so, the more our love to do so will strengthen. And the more we have love to turn within, the more our inclination to turn outwards will grow weaker and weaker and weaker and drop off. So that's another part of another answer to your question. The other thing is about the status of Bhagavan. Bhagavan is Guru in our view. In his view, there is neither Guru nor disciple, because in his view, there are no others. Because in the state of jnana, we alone are. So in his actual experience is, I alone am. But in our view, he seems to be something other than ourselves. So as the person whom he seems to be, he's not actually the person he seems to be. Bhagavan is not Ramana Maharshi. Ramana Maharshi is what Bhagavan appears to be in our view. So as that person, he has a function as Guru. And that the function of Guru is to turn our attention back within. So in order to turn our attention back within, he needs to seemingly come down to our level. In his view, there is no ego, no world, nothing. But if he tells us that is the ultimate truth, he said the ultimate truth is ajata. There's no creation, no destruction, no one in bondage, no liberation, nothing. It's just I am. That is the ultimate truth. But if he tells us that, what use is that to us? So he has to come down to our problem. He first has to acknowledge that there's a problem. So he acknowledges, yes, there's a problem. That's why he begins Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu by saying, because we see the world. This doesn't mean that Bhagavan sees the world. He's acknowledging that we have a problem. We see the world, and because we see the world, we're experiencing so many problems. What is the root cause of all our problems? It is only ego. That is, we ourselves are the cause of all our problems. So since ego is the cause, the way to get rid of all problems is to get rid of ego. So he comes down to our level to teach that. So it seems to us that firstly, Bhagavan is someone separate from us. And it also seems to us that in his view, we are separate from him. That is our own ajnana. In his view, there is nothing other than himself. He doesn't see us as other than himself. That is why he has infinite love for us, because he loves us as himself. Because for him, there are no others. So we need to distinguish between the state he is actually in and the state he seems to be in from our point of view. From our point of view, he has function as Guru. As a Guru, he has to come down to our level and acknowledge that there's a problem and provide the solution to the problem. He acknowledges that there's a problem. He diagnoses the root of the problem is ego, and the solution is getting rid of ego. What is ego? Ego is a false awareness of ourselves, so we can get rid of it only by being aware of ourselves as we actually are. When we follow the path he shows, ego is never going to attain jnana. That is, Eddie is never going to be self-realized. Not only is Eddie never going to be self-realized, the I that says I am Eddie is never going to be self-realized. When that I is dissolved permanently, what remains is self-realization. That is jnana. Who is it who experiences jnana? Jnana is nothing but pure awareness. Pure awareness can never be an object. So what experiences pure awareness is only pure awareness. And how does it experience pure awareness? Only by being pure awareness. That's why Bhagavan says, no, Tānai iritale, tannai aridala. In verse 26 of Upadēśa Undiyār, he says, being oneself alone is knowing oneself. What we actually are is pure awareness. We can know ourselves only by being the pure awareness that we actually are. In order to be that pure awareness, we need to look at this ego so closely, but we see it's nothing but pure awareness. Just like looking at the snake so carefully, but we see it's nothing except a rope. When we see that we are nothing other than pure awareness, then we are nothing other than Bhagavan. Bhagavan is nothing other than us. There is only pure awareness. That pure awareness is what is our own real nature, what we always actually are. That is what has appeared to us in the form of Bhagavan Ramana to tell us to turn back within. So ultimately, there is no difference between us and him. But so long as we are aware of ourselves as I am this person, he is Guru, we are humble devotees. Or not so humble devotees. We should be humble devotees, but unfortunately we've got too much ego to be humble. Our aim is to be at least humble devotees. So long as we limit ourselves as this person, all this duality of guru and disciple seems to exist. But when we follow the path shown by Guru and lose ourselves, then Guru alone remains, and we are that. That is not attaining the status of Guru, that is losing ourselves completely in Guru, being swallowed by Guru. Is that clear?
Yeah, that's an amazing answer. Thanks. Yeah, brilliant.
So we are never going to be Guru so long as we take ourselves to be this person. When we are swallowed by Guru, then Guru alone will remain and there'll be no disciples. So even Guru ceases to be Guru because Guru is actually nothing but that pure awareness. That's why Bhagavan often used to say, God, Guru and Self are one and the same. Self there means our own real nature. What we actually are is nothing but that. The functions of God and Guru appear only when we rise as ego. When ego merges back in its source, in the pure awareness that we actually are, then there's no separate God and no separate Guru. There's only pure being, pure awareness, pure happiness, pure love, Satchidananda, infinite happiness, infinite love. And that is what Bhagavan really is. And that is what we actually are. That's the reason, the whole purpose of his teaching is to make us understand that we are nothing other than him. And he is not the form we take him to be. He is nothing but that which is shining in our heart as I am. What we always know, but always overlook.
Thanks very much.
It's so incredibly simple, Bhagavan's teaching, but it's deceptively simple because actually this is extremely deep. Extremely deep, and we have to lose ourselves in the depth of it.
Michael?
Yes.
Should I go on to the next question?
Yes, please.
So it's something like this. It says, similar to Maharishi's experience, Eckhart Tolle looked at his eye before his awakening realization. Is his message of being in present moment same as holding on to I? Do you consider him enlightened?
Who am I? I don't know who I am, so I don't know who Eckhart Tolle is. But from the little I've heard and read of what he's written, it seems very superficial compared to what Bhagavan has said. It doesn't seem to me. It's very easy to read a few books on Advaita, read some of Bhagavan's teachings, read a few other things, and to arrive at a relatively superficial understanding, and start teaching others. That is not what this path is about. This path is about turning within and losing ourselves. If Eckhart Tolle has attained anything, what he has attained, it cannot be real because Eckhart Tolle himself is not real. The I that is aware of itself as I am Eckhart Tolle is itself not real. So if that I thinks I have realized myself, that is not real. So Bhagavan says, to say I have known myself or I have not known myself, both are equally ridiculous. They're both the grounds for ridicule. Why? Because there's not one self. Then self is not, can never be an object to be known by another. There are no two selves, one self to know the other self as an object. So when we know ourselves, we lose ourselves. That is, we cease to be the person we seem to be. Not only do we're anyway going to cease to be this person when we die. Not only do we cease to be the person we seem to be, we cease to be the ego who is aware of itself as I am this person. So that is why it is said, Vindava Kandile, Kandava Vindile. That means those who say have not seen, those who have seen do not say. So anyone who says, I have realized myself, you can be sure they haven't realized themselves. Brahman, what we actually are, our own real nature will never say, I've realized myself, because it's never unrealized itself. Bhagavan used to say about realization, there is nothing, what is real is always real. So there's nothing to be realized. The problem is, we have realized what is unreal. If we unrealize the unreal, that is what is called realization. So we simply need to remove our wrong knowledge. So if Eckhart Tolle, if the ego that is aware of itself as Eckhart Tolle, I am Eckhart Tolle, gives up that false awareness, I am Eckhart Tolle, and remains as just I am, that is realization. But so long as there's someone who says, I, Eckhart Tolle, have realized myself, that is ignorance. So Bhagavan's teaching, as I say, Bhagavan's teachings are very simple, but they're very deep and very subtle. So it's very easy. You or I compose. That is, we all know enough. We've studied Bhagavan's teachings enough to set ourselves up as gurus. And if we happen to be good at writing, we can write a bestseller, and we can get on Oprah Winfrey show, and all these things will happen. But that doesn't mean it's jnana. Jnana is losing ourselves completely. That is our aim. Our aim is not to realize anything. Our aim is to unrealize everything that is unreal, including ourselves as this person that we seem to be. So though there may appear to be superficial similarities, not only Eckhart Tolle, there are so many, there are numerous gurus nowadays. Eckhart Tolle happens to be, commercially at least, a very successful one. He's made a lot of money out of this. Unfortunately, Bhagavan didn't have that business acumen, so Bhagavan didn't make a lot of money or anything. Bhagavan just lived a simple life with his stick and his begging and his kamandalu and his kopi. That's all. That was Bhagavan's sole possession. He had no desire for anything else. He had no desire to teach anyone. Bhagavan didn't, of his own accord, teach anything to anyone. If people came to Bhagavan, if they kept quiet, Bhagavan would keep quiet. He wouldn't say anything. Only because people asked Bhagavan, he gave teachings. Because in Bhagavan's view, there is no one ignorant. There's no one who needs to be saved. There's no world to be saved. There is just pure being. So Bhagavan is Bhagavan is the fundamental reality, the source from which we've all risen. So, not only nowadays, there have always been so many people. I'm not saying that people like Eckhart Tolle, they may be very sincere. They may think they've achieved something. But that is not, there are so many, on this path, there are so many intermediate goals. But the ultimate goal is to lose ourselves completely. I hope that answers that question. I hope it's not no offense meant to Eckhart Tolle, but I'm just saying. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's no such. Maybe the ego that was aware of itself as Eckhart Tolle has completely disappeared. Who am I to judge? But from what he writes and what he talks, it seems something far more superficial than what Bhagavan has taught us. That's in my view, but who am I to judge? Who am I? That's the important question we should be asked. We shouldn't, when people used to come and ask Bhagavan is such and such a person, a jnani, Bhagavan sometimes used to say, there is only one jnani, and you are that. That is, we can never find jnana outside ourselves. If we are looking outside for jnani, is this person a jnani, is this person a jnani, is this person a jnani, we're looking in the wrong direction. We're looking away from ourselves. We need to look only at ourselves and see what we are. If we see what we are, we will see we are nothing but jnana, and that jnana alone exists. And there are no multiple jnanas, and therefore no multiple jnanis. I hope that adequately answers that question.
The next question is from paragraph 14. It is super clear that we have been looking for happiness in the wrong direction. And to achieve eternal and permanent happiness, Bhagavan asks us to look within or attend to oneself. That's it. However, when living in this material world, even though you don't have a desire for material things, your family forces you into these things by saying, buy a new house, new car, get married, better job, look good, etc. How to deal with these situations in the real world when you are not interested in these material things in the least, but are forced into them? We know from Bhagavan's teaching that it is a waste of time, but the family pushes you into these. How to deal with this, Michael?
That is, whatever we what our family are pressing us to do is to do actions of mind, speech, and body in order to achieve more wealth or whatever. Actions of mind, speech, and body are driven by two forces. One is certain, in order for what, as Bhagavan said, what is to happen is, what is never to happen will not happen, however much effort you make. And what is not to happen, and what is to happen will not stop, however much obstruction you make. So everything, our entire life and the life of all other people is going on according to destiny. In order for us to experience our destiny, supposing it's our destiny to have a family, to have a wife or husband and children and so on, and we may have parents who are elderly. So we've got so many responsibilities, it seems to us. What we are to do, both to provide for our own needs and to provide for the needs of others, we cannot do anything, that is, we cannot achieve anything that we are not destined to get. So those actions that we need to do in order for our prarabdha to unfold, our body, speech, and mind will be made to do those actions. But in addition to, we are made to do those actions by God, or by Guru, by Bhagavan, we can say. That's in order to experience our prarabdha, whatever actions are necessary, we will be made to do. But our actions are not only being driven by his will, our actions are also being driven by our will. We have likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, and so on. And our mind is wandering under the sway of these likes, dislikes, and so on. So, and the action, when the mind wanders, it leads to actions of speech and of body. So the actions we do may be either actions driven by our own will, or actions driven by his will, or actions driven by both. So we cannot distinguish. All we know is whatever actions we need to do, we will be made to do. So we need not concern ourselves about action. Our only concern should be to turn our attention within. Let the body, speech, and mind do whatever action they need to do in order for the destiny to unfold. That's no concern of ours, because they'll be made to do that. As Bhagavan said in the first sentence of the note he wrote for his mother, according to the prarabdha of each one, he who is for that, meaning God or Guru, will make them, being in the heart of each of them, will make them act. So we will be made to do whatever actions are necessary. If we had to work hard and buy a bigger house for our family, we'll be made to do that. It need not concern us. Our only concern should be turning within and surrendering ourselves. This is the ideal towards which we're working, but so long as we allow our attention away from ourselves, we experience ourselves as this person, and we consequently experience all the pressures that the world seems to put on us with our family and with our work and with so many commitments. We have to pay the bills, we have to pay the taxes. All these seem real, so long as we allow our attention to go outwards. But what Bhagavan has asked us to do, don't worry about these things. Simply turn your attention within. Every prarabdha will take care of all these things. Leave it all to surrender yourself to God. He will bear any amount of burden. Whatever amount of burden you put on God, He will bear it all. So even the burden of thinking about whether I should do like this or whether I should do like that, even that burden we should leave to Him. So Bhagavan's path is an inward path. Let us not be concerned about the outward life. The outward life, we should have trust in Bhagavan's words, but the outward life is going on according to destiny. So whatever our body, speech, and mind are to do for our family, they will be made to do. Let us not concern ourselves about that. Our only concern should be turning within and thereby surrendering ourselves. Bhagavan said, your effort to work or to renounce both are bondage. So that don't worry about activity. The activity that is to go on according to prarabdha you cannot avoid. Any activity over and above that is unnecessary. It's because you're allowing yourself to be swayed by your vasanas. So what is the solution? Don't allow yourself to be swayed by your vishaya vasanas. Cling firmly to self-attentiveness and thereby merge back within. Does that adequately answer that question? It may not seem an entirely satisfactory answer, but if we think about it, this is the only real answer to all such questions.
Yes, Michael, it does. Thank you so much.
Right.
The next question is, did Ramana ever give teachings on the 4 cycles, golden, silver, copper, and iron ages, and then confluence age, where the old meets the new? Did he believe that it repeated if he did buy into them? My thoughts are, they are concepts from the mind. I'd like to believe that we progress away from the earth and this drama. Om Shanti. Thank you.
That is, there are many teachings are given in religious texts to suit many people at many different levels. A lot of these teachings are allegorical or metaphorical. We can take these different yugas as metaphors for the different stages we go through in the spiritual path. But rather confusingly, these yugas go from better to worse, and now we're in the very worst one. So it doesn't always match up. These are different. That is one of the basic principles of all Indic religions, all religions of Indian origin, all the Dharmic religions. That's the vast family of religions called Hinduism and Buddhism and Jainism and Sikhism. All these religions, one basic belief they all have is in samsara, the cycle of birth and death, in karma. That is that everything is cyclical. That we are born, we grow up, we grow old, we die, and then we take another birth. It's a perpetual cycle. So this concept of the 4 yugas is born out of the same idea, but everything is cyclical. So it's up to us how literally we want to take it. For if we have come to Bhagavan's path, Bhagavan is, what Bhagavan teaches is something far, far deeper than this. He says the world doesn't exist except in your view. So all these 4 yugas and everything, in whose view does this exist? Only in the view of ego. So if we rise as ego, this world seems to exist. And so long as the world seems to exist, we can have all sorts of beliefs about it. We can believe that God created the world in 7 days, or that Brahma created the world from his mind, or that Vishnu lying on Adisesha dreamt all this. We can have so many beliefs about how this came into existence, what happens when it comes into existence, or we can believe it all began with a big bang so many billions of years ago. There are all sorts of beliefs we may have. But what happens to all these beliefs when we fall asleep? They all disappear. They reappear when we rise as ego. So all these, according to Bhagavan, whatever exists, anything other than ourselves, exists only in the view of ourself as ego. Only when we rise as ego that this world and all these different religions, different philosophies, different sciences, different worldviews, all these come into existence only when we rise as ego. So all these seem to exist only in the view of ego. So they depend for their seeming existence upon the seeming existence of ourself as ego. If we investigate ourselves and know what we actually are, we'll know we never rose as ego, and therefore there was never any creation, there was never any world, never any 4 yugas. So Bhagavan's teaching goes far, far beyond all these things. But that doesn't mean these beliefs are inappropriate. They may be appropriate for certain people at certain levels of their spiritual development, but it is not the ultimate truth. Bhagavan is leading us back to the ultimate truth. The ultimate truth is that there was never any ego, never any world, nothing as that. What is alone is as it always is. That is the ultimate truth. We haven't yet reached there, but Bhagavan had to come down one level, because in our view there is a world and there is an ego, so he had to come down to our level, accept the seeming existence of these things, but he said, this world exists only in the view of ego. Investigate this ego will disappear, and the world will disappear along with it. As simple as that.
And thank you.
There are so many different beliefs we can choose from if we want to. And it's appropriate that there are different beliefs, because different people are at different levels of spiritual development, and different beliefs are appropriate to them. That is why there's such a diversity of different religions, different philosophies, different worldviews. All these are appropriate. They're appropriate to people at different levels of spiritual growth. We've been through all these things in one form or other.
No, Bhagavan didn't talk about the end of time or anything like that, because a lot of religions...
He did talk about when does time begin? Time begins every morning when you wake up, or every dream when you begin to dream. Time comes to an end when you fall asleep, and it again starts. Time exists only in the view of ego. There is no time other than ego. Only when we rise in sleep, when we don't rise as ego, are you aware of any time? No, we're just aware I am. And I am is timeless, because I am is the ground from which ego appears. And only in the view of ego, time exists. So Bhagavan takes us right back to the root. He simplifies the whole thing.
Michael, we have questions.
Yes.
So I'm just going to, and we don't actually have that much time. We've got about an hour and a bit.
Okay.
So, and there are about 7, 8, 9 questions. So
I better be quick.
Yeah, I think so. So
I'll try my best.
Yeah, because we can't go on too long. There's a question from Steve Hamby. Steve, you wanted to ask a question?
I just want to mention that a lot of the value I get in your writings, Michael, and also these get-togethers, is the real life examples that you use that I can then immediately apply, which I think I read one time was the value of the parables in the Jesus' parables, that people could sort of, oh, yeah, I kind of got it. Like a while ago when you're talking about the being on the train, you don't need to carry your luggage. You kind of set it down if you want to. And when Eddie was talking about, and you mentioned about goals, and you mentioned, I think, you know, you always have a journey where you are. You don't really worry so much about the, you know, miles of. One thing that helped me along those lines a long time ago was the real life example of this is when the guy said, you know, a horse runs even though he doesn't know where the finish line is. He just does what he needs to do. And that helped me kind of, I don't know, just sort of relax and be patient and let the whole thing unfold. Within that, all kinds of things happen. But hearing that the horse runs, even though he doesn't know where the finish line is, just felt right. And it kind of helped me a good bit. And I want to mention one thing about Eckhart Tolle since I started working with him. I've been in different countries, different cities and so forth over time. But just like 20 years ago, I met him over 20 years ago. As a matter of fact, 20 years ago today, or a few days afterwards, he was having a gathering, a small gathering, pretty small. Who was 3 years old, met him just north of New York City, about 90 miles, a place called the Omega Institute. And that was right after, a few days after 9/11, which was 20 years ago today. And I was, you know, my mind was wondering, I'd already known him. I met him first time, just a very small gathering of people in Costa Rica. And this was a year or so later, and this had already been prepared for a long time. So he went ahead, and I thought, well, gee, this is going to be interesting because it's almost next door. But I thought he did a great job. But the thing about him that I wanted to mention, which is, I think, what you said a while ago, Eckhart, there's different levels of different teachings and so forth for different people. And a person named, I've been working with a guy named Leonard Jacobson who wrote about the present moment. And after a while, I said, there's anybody else who sort of does your kind of thing, you know, from the present? He said, well, kind of like you were saying about Eckhart, there's a guy I've heard about called Eckhart Tolle who blah, blah, blah. So I started working with him for a year or so. And then one day I asked him, Eckhart, something about, well, what did you do when you had this experience there in London when you're 29 years old? He said, I read books. It was just another mind. And he said, but there was one book. And someone said, and he said, it was I Am That by Nāṛ. So then that led me to Nāṛ. And then that led me to other people on the side, like David Gottman, who I think mentioned, you know, then I went to Ramana Maharshi and I found out that way that you, Michael, were kind of, in my opinion, I think it's well grounded, like the premier spokesman or a person who can make this understood by people. So that's sort of, and I think this is what you said, like, it's hard to know what the value of a teacher is because even though it may not be the ultimate, but, you know, God works in different ways. If your heart is right, I think, to kind of let you go as far as you want to go, you might say. Yeah. That's sort of my formulation of that. But my question here is, has to do with the desires and things. And you mentioned what I've come over many years to sort of summarize kind of a lot of what we're talking about today is the fact that I call it the fact that pursuing desires is futile because not the pursuit, but the satisfaction even of desires only results in a temporary calming of the mind. It's madness in a way, kind of like a little kid doing a soap bubble and goes after it and gets in it, pops, you know, they always pop. And that helped me, by the way, kind of let go of more desires and chasing different things and so forth, because that was in the back of my mind, you know, like I'm chasing a desire. It doesn't matter if it's satisfied or not. It's not going to work. So that it kind of took off the pressure a little bit. So this is a distinction because, like you say, this is a simple teaching, but there's all kinds of subtleties and distinctions and stuff. And this is my question has to do with that. And if you can tell me if I'm kind of looking at this in a helpful way. When you mentioned, for example, the person who, like the shade under the headache, you take a pill, or you know, But I was thinking, I have a friend next door. We talk about these things occasionally. If I mention today, like which is basically that there's no thing, there's an experience, there's no person, anything like that that can bring you happiness, because all those things will go away, okay? For one thing, and that's kind of in the back of your mind as you're enjoying the thing. But for example, he'd say, well, what about if you have a headache, you're not going to take the pill, or if you're a prisoner of war and you weigh 70 pounds like in 1945 and you have some food, or, like you mentioned twice, the expression enjoying a tasty meal. And maybe that's what it has to do with the word tasty. Maybe it's normal to go to sleep and to eat different things and, drink water, stuff like that. But if you're pursuing a tasty meal, that sort of makes me think of desirable, pleasant, and so forth. And maybe that's the distinction, because I would give him an answer, well, yeah, blah, 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 but I really wouldn't know what I was talking about. If he said, well, if there's nothing in the world can bring happiness, then why would you take the pill to get away with the headache and stuff like that? And maybe the whole point is, well, it isn't really happiness, but there's something that would make it reasonable and normal and right, I think, to go ahead and take the pill, or if it's 140 degrees and sit there under the shade, well, I'm going to sit under the shade. So there's a question in there somewhere. If you could talk about that a little bit, that would, I think, help me.
I'm not quite sure what to say. That is but Bhagavan has said that there is no bottomless pit as bottomless as desire. However much we try to fulfill it, it will never be satisfied. That is, we may get brief and temporary satisfaction. But again, the more our desires are satisfied, Bhagavan also said, it's like pouring petrol on a fire. The more you satisfy the desires, the more the desires grow. So there is no satisfaction. I mean, there's no real satisfaction. Whatever satisfaction we get from satisfying our desires is so brief and so temporary. And the happiness that we seem to attain from that is not happiness that is coming from those things. It's happiness from within ourselves. That is why Bhagavan emphasized there in this 14th paragraph, but it is due to our avivika. Viveka means the ability to distinguish. Because we cannot distinguish where the happiness is coming from. We think, but when I eat a tasty meal, the happiness is coming from the food. So if I eat more tasty meals, I'll be more happy. If we think when we desire money, but if we get the money, we think the happiness has come from the money. So if I have more money, I'll be more happy. We are extremely foolish in this regard. We are not discriminating properly. We wrongly associate happiness with that we think the happiness we are achieving is coming from the things that we get rather than from within ourselves. How to overcome this avivika? We need greater inner clarity. How do we gain that greater inner clarity? Only by turning our mind within. The more we turn our mind within, the more our mind will be clarified. Why? Because what is within is that original light, the light of pure awareness. It is always shining in our heart as I am. To the extent to which we attend to I am, to that extent we are, so to speak, immersing ourselves in clarity. We are bathing in clarity. And the more we bathe ourselves in clarity, the more we are washing off the lack of clarity that is the nature of the mind. So the more we put Bhagavan's teachings into practice, the more we go deep in this path of self-investigation and self-surrender, the more clearly we will be able to see that whatever happiness we get from other things, firstly, it's very trivial happiness, it's very fleeting happiness, and it doesn't actually come from those things. It's coming only from within. We can see it. When you whenever you experience a pleasure, where is that pleasure coming from? It's not actually coming. Suppose you eat a nice, tasty meal. The pleasure that you're experiencing is pleasure coming from within yourself, not from a meal. So we can, if we apply this vichara in all circumstances in life, we can see how the happiness that we seem to achieve from the external things is actually coming from within us. But when we experience that, our attention is no longer on the thing. We don't even notice the tasty food we're having. We're just dwelling on the happiness that is always in our heart. We need not eat a tasty meal. We need not have a big bank balance. We need not have a life free of disease or free of suffering or any. We don't need any of these things. We don't even need to be free of a headache. All we need to do is to see that happiness is always lying within. This doesn't mean that we stop eating or that we stop taking pills when an appropriate tablet when we have a headache. All these things, this is all just part of the life. But we don't think we're going to get real happiness by eating or by taking pills to remove our happiness. We are trying to divert our mind away from external things back within, because only within lies true happiness. And the more we seek that happiness within ourselves, the less appeal external things will have. So the clarity does come by following this path. Does that at all answer your question?
Let me just put it into a simple sentence. Do you think if Ramana Maharshi was out there in the summertime and it's really, really hot, like you say, and it's 130 degrees, I don't know, that's way too much, I guess. But then, 10 feet away, there's a tree, it's only 100. Would he walked over there and got under that tree? Or would he say, well, that's an experience. I'll have, but it doesn't, obviously not going to make him happy. But it seemed like a normal thing. What do you think he would do? Would he stay there and sweat, or would he walk over there? I mean, it's a distinction. I'm trying to pull this out a little bit.
When we talk about what he would do, we are taking him to be a person, which he is not. But okay, if we take him to be a person, he would do what any sensible person would do. He would go and sit in the shade. Because he doesn't have a restless mind like us, he would be very happy sitting in the shade until the sun sets. But we have a restless mind. So we sit in the shade for a while, and then we want to go out and play in the sun again, like small children. So, of course, Bhagavan is using that just as an analogy. But if in actual fact, Bhagavan would do the sensible thing, he would remain in the shade. He wouldn't bother about coming out.
I know you're not being presumptuous, so I appreciate you going out on a limb and telling me what you think you would say.
Yeah.
But the same thing will be true. That's what I said to begin with. Maybe it's about, desirable food or tasty food, because he would also eat, but he wouldn't be thinking about the next meal and it'll be more tasty. It won't so taste good. He didn't do that, but he would eat, but he didn't become preoccupied with it's tasty. That's going to make me more happier. You follow what I'm talking about there? I mean, that's a distinction that makes sense to me, but I'm just running it past you.
In the early days of the ashram, when cooking became a regular thing in the ashram, Bhagavan used to help in the kitchen. He would cut the vegetables. He would do all the things that were required for cooking, just like anyone else. Later on, he gave up going to the kitchen for one reason or another. But the cooks used to come and ask him to come and taste the food. Or they would ask him for directions, how to do this, how to do that. He would give direction, and he would come and he would taste the food. And he would tell them if the salt was correct, or it needs a little bit more salt or a little bit more spice. Or he would give a practical suggestion. So the food was invariably very, very tasty by the time it was cooked. When the food was served on his plate, various dishes would be served, he would mix it all up and just take it like that. People say, oh, Bhagavan, this is such a tasty dish. If you mix it with that, it's going to lose its taste. You shouldn't mix these things together. Bhagavan said, I can taste the difference, but for me, it's all the same.
That's the distinction I was trying to pull out. So I appreciate you being patient to let me to the point that this question would make sense.
Yeah.
That's what I thought that was kind was. You got to get ego, but the great way is not difficult, for he has no preferences. He was kind of a walking testament of that. Thank you, Michael.
Bhagavan knows what is tasty food, and he knows people like tasty food, so he tried to ensure that the food that was served in the ashram was tasty. But for himself, he was indifferent to the taste. So he knew the taste, but he was indifferent to it.
And maybe 20 years later, some of those people, they too had grown to that point. That they were different to the taste.
Yeah.
Well, great. Thank you again. I appreciate that.
The next question is from Stefan. Stefan, you wanted to ask something?
Oh yes, thank you, Michael. I've lost track of it now. Yes, the meditation practice. I started. I do this. I used to for decades do meditation practice where I would close my eyes and, as I told you before, say a mantra. So I would be trying to get away from external phenomena and then let go of my thoughts internally. But now I realize from what you're teaching and Ramana's teaching that basically that's not really going to do it in the end. So now I'm opening my eyes so that I got no problem with external phenomena anymore. I love it actually in a way. And then the thoughts, I just let them come because they're not no problem with the thoughts. And then it's just the awareness, but then just allowing myself to be that awareness, which is aware of the external phenomena. But I know that that's only a step, and then you have to kind of say, well, is it really me? Anyway, I'm a bit like, there's an Indian saying, only mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the midday sun. But basically, I find it quite hard to just stay with the awareness. I keep on thinking, oh, I have to do something. I have to kind of go out. I have to be. So anyway, but I'm on the way on it. So it's not so much a question, but it's more. I suppose the big step is that the phenomena is not the problem. I got to get beyond this idea that I got that I got to still the mind. Right? The mind is anyway. That's the question.
Yeah. Well, whether phenomena appear or don't appear, whether the mind is restless or not restless, or peaceful or whatever, what is the one thing that is always constant is that fundamental awareness of our own existence, I am. That is what we should be trying to hold on to. When we talk about awareness, we need to be very clear what we are talking about. What we are trying to attend to is that which is aware. We are not attending to our awareness of phenomena. We are attending to that which is aware of phenomena. Who is it? That's why Bhagavan expressed it. Bhagavan never recommended that we ask questions, but he expressed his teachings in the form of questions to point us in the right direction. So Bhagavan said, whatever appears, to whom does it appear? That is what we need to investigate. So we are turning our attention. We are not trying to push away the phenomena. We are just trying to turn our attention back towards ourselves. And by turning our attention back towards ourselves, to the extent to which we attend to ourselves, we are not attending to phenomena. So in effect, we are turning away from phenomena back towards ourselves. But the aim is not just to turn away from phenomena, because as I said earlier, we turn away from phenomena every day when we fall asleep. But that isn't a permanent solution. That leaves just a mano layer. Our aim is to hold on to ourselves. The more we hold on to ourselves, the more we are automatically letting go of phenomena. But phenomena may still appear, but we're indifferent to them. And the more we hold on to I am, the more they, so to speak, recede into the background. They're hardly noticed. And finally, when we turn the full 180 degrees back towards ourselves, we thereby turn our back, so to speak, metaphorically speaking, on all phenomena and face only ourselves. At that point, we are aware only of ourselves and not of any phenomena. That state in which we are aware only of ourselves, is a state of pure awareness. When we are aware of ourselves as pure awareness, ego is thereby destroyed, because the ego is nothing but the impure awareness, the adjunct mixed awareness. I am Stefan, or I am Michael, or whoever. So we need to go deeper and deeper within. We are not concerned about the phenomena. We're not concerned about the world. We're not concerned about thoughts. We're not concerned about anything. We're only concerned about, who am I? Hold on to this I.
Thank you.
Does that adequately answer your question?
I think, I think this sort of rushing out into the sun, that I was thinking that partly the religious or the cultural education, don't be lazy, don't be selfish, think of others, help others. All this baggage we've accumulated to be a good person,
yes,
kind of stops us from. That's why they were rushing out into the midday sun.
Yes.
Not just desires and pleasures, but I should and I ought to and I'm better and all this sort of stuff.
But Bhagavan says, don't be selfish. Don't think of others. Because as soon as we think of others, there's a separation. I am this, these are others. If we hold on to I am, the others disappear and I am alone remain. Then those others are nothing other than I am.
Yes.
So the selfishness arises when we attend to others, when we look at others. Others means anything other than ourselves, any phenomena. As soon as we are aware of something other than ourselves, we are aware of ourselves as something limited.
Yes.
That we can't be aware of another without first being aware of ourselves as something limited. So, but if we, instead of attending to others, if we attend to ourselves alone, the limitation drops off and then I am alone remains as the one infinite whole, in which all others must be included, because there can't be anything other than the infinite.
Thank you. Let the others ask questions.
Right.
The next question, Michael, is what do we do about our vasanas? And also, what do we do about our emotions if we feel we have stuffed them down and they are causing pain?
Okay. Regarding vasanas, vasanas means inclinations. There are two basic kinds of vasanas. There are Vishaya vasanas, the inclination to attend to and to experience Vishayas. Vishayas means anything other than ourselves. The other kind of vasana is what is called Satvasana. Satvasana is the inclination just to be as we actually are. We can be as we actually are only by attending to ourselves. So the way to deal with Vishaya vasanas is not to allow ourselves to be swayed by them, instead to attend only to ourselves. In other words, we should be swayed only by the Satvasana, not by the Vishaya vasanas. The more we hold on to ourselves, we thereby refrain from allowing ourselves to be swayed by Vishaya vasanas. They lose their strength. Vishaya vasanas are strengthened to the extent to which we allow ourselves to be swayed by them. The more we are swayed by our Vishaya vasanas, the more strength they gain, because they gain strength from our attention to whatever Vishayas we're inclined to attend to. If we refrain from being swayed by the Vishaya vasana, that means if we refrain from attending to any Vishayas, by attending only to ourselves, we weaken the Vishaya vasanas and strengthen the Satvasana. And it's that Satvasana which alone will save us. That Satvasana is what is otherwise called bhakti, or love. That is the key to success in this path. And we can cultivate that love to be, to know and to be what we actually are, only by trying to know to be what we actually are. In other words, by trying to be self-attentive. I hope that answers that. And the other part of the question was about emotions and so on. Emotions are phenomena. That everything other than ourselves is a phenomenon. It's a vishaya. The seeds that give rise to the vishayas are the vishaya vasanas. If we have certain emotions or certain things that we've suppressed in the past, the more we dwell on them, the more strength we are giving to them. Our aim is not to suppress anything. Our aim is to be indifferent to it. So there may be so many suppressed emotions and things. So what? Our aim is to know what we are. These emotions are for the mind. Are we this mind? No, we are not. We are that fundamental awareness I am. That is what we should cling to. Emotions, like all other phenomena, they're unreal. What is real is only I am. How to get rid of what is unreal? Only by clinging to what is real. So we, as I say, we are not trying to suppress any emotions. We are trying to cease attaching any importance to these emotions. They're not real. Emotions come and go. The very name emotion, it means it's in motion. It's constantly moving. So emotions are never constant. Whatever is not constant cannot be ourselves, because we are that which is constant. So we just have to, we may have so many suppressed emotions and things. They will cause us trouble only if we attach reality to them. Are they real? No, they cannot be real, because they appear and disappear. What is real is only I am. What is real must always be real. As Bhagavan said, whatever exists at one time, but not at another time, doesn't actually exist, even when it seems to exist. So what always exists is only this fundamental awareness I am. That alone is what is real. Everything else is just an appearance, including the experience of all these other things. Ego is itself an appearance. It appears in waking and dream, it disappears in sleep. So none of these things are real. What is real in the ego is only that fundamental awareness I am. That is what we should cling to. And all other things will drop off. The so-called suppressed emotions will lose their strength, because we'll no longer give any weight to them. So if you want psychotherapy, this is the perfect psychotherapy. You can be free of all suppressed whatever it is. You can be free of everything by clinging to what is real, because everything else is unreal. When you cling to what is real, what is unreal automatically slips off. I hope that adequately answers that question, or that pair of questions.
The next question, Michael, is okay. The dog chewing the dry bone is losing its blood and harming itself. Similarly, by searching for happiness in the world, what are we losing, and in what way are we harming ourselves? Looking for happiness in the world, aren't we slowly learning that there is no happiness in the world?
Yes. If the dog goes on chewing that bone, eventually it will find that there's nothing in the bone, but eventually hopefully it will come to realize that it's its own blood, and that it's actually losing its blood by, rather than nourishing itself, it's losing its nourishment by chewing the bone. What are we losing? We are losing the infinite happiness that we actually are. So long as we're looking for happiness outside, we are turning our back on the infinite ocean of happiness that we actually are. So there cannot be a greater loss than that. Our very rising as ego is the greatest loss, because we are losing our real, of course we never lose our real nature, but seemingly we've lost our real nature. we seemingly limited ourselves, the one infinite whole, as this small little person. How can that ever be a satisfactory state? So the greatest loss is rising as ego. And the greatest gain is the destruction of ego. Not that we gain anything, because what is always there is always there. Nothing ever changes. But we are free of this limitation. We can free ourselves from limitation only by freeing ourselves from the one who feels I am limited. That is ego. I hope that adequately answers that question.
The next one is says that you talk about being in happiness whilst asleep. How does that remain true when you have an uneasy sleep? For example, nightmares, disturbed dreams, etc. Is that still happiness?
No. Sleep here means dreamless sleep. A sleep that is, what disturbs sleep is either waking or dream. So it is not, when sleep is disturbed by either waking or dream, it's not sleep any longer. Sleep means the state which is free of dreams and waking. Why is it free of dreams and waking? Because it's free of ego, in whose view alone waking and dream seem to exist. So when we're free of ego, that is the highest happiness. So when you're actually sleeping, there's no disturbance. When you're disturbed, you're not actually sleeping, you're either awake or dreaming. I hope that adequately answers that. So when in Bhagavan's teachings, or in Advaita philosophy in general, when we talk about sleep, it means dreamless sleep. Rather than every time saying dreamless sleep or deep sleep, we just say sleep. Sleep implies the state that is devoid of dreams. Dream is not, though dreams seem to occur in sleep, they are not sleep. It's just another state like waking. It's a state in which we experience ourselves as a body and experience phenomena. And waking is as unreal as dream, because it's all just a dream.
So the next question is from Olena.
Thank you, Shalini. Hello, Michael.
Hello.
I would like to thank you very much for today's talk. I actually have a couple of questions. First is, I would like to ask whether we can call Manalaya state, any of Manalaya states, dull tamasic state. This is the first. Actually, let me ask one and then second question. Okay. So this question: can we call any state of Manalaya dull tamasic state or not? Because in my opinion, maybe, who knows, maybe not.
Right. Shall I answer that one first? And then you will
Yes,
answer?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas, are gunas of the mind. In sleep or manolaya, there is no mind. The mind is dissolved, albeit temporarily. So manolaya is beyond the three gunas. From the perspective of the mind in the waking state, sleep seems to be a state of dullness, a state of darkness. Because we as ego, what we now take ourselves is to be ego. And what we now take to be knowledge is all our awareness of all this multiplicity. Because those are absent in sleep, we take sleep to be a state of tamas, or a state of dullness. Bhagavan has said, sleep is not a state of dullness, it's a state of perfect clarity, the clarity of pure awareness. So it's a wrong view to think that sleep is anything other than pure awareness. Because what is the root of all other things? It is only ego. When ego dissolves in sleep, everything else disappears. We don't experience tamas, we don't experience rajas. We experience only the purest of pure sattvas. Sattva means beingness. The root meaning of sattva, the actual meaning, sat means being, tva means, it's like the English suffix ness. So sattva means beingness. So that state of pure being, that perfect clarity that we experience in sleep, that is the pure sattva. But that's not the sattva, that is the sattva that is beyond all the three relative gunas.
So, okay, I understood. Actually,
Yes.
I also thought, I rather thought that maybe waking state is more tamasic than
Yes,
sleep.
yes, it is, certainly.
Yes, because
Because
at
the
same
waking
time-
state comes into existence because of a mixture of rajas and tamas.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Okay, so okay. Actually, I just heard this idea from someone, and then I thought that it seems no, you never mentioned tamas regarding in connection with this state. So yes.
Most people who've read the old scriptures, it is often said sleep is a state of tamas, you should avoid sleep. Well, of course, we need to sleep, but we can't remain in sleep forever, and we make no progress in sleep.
Yes.
Or in any state of manolaya, even if you call it nirvikalpa samadhi.
Yes.
Actually, and according to Bhagavan, that is according to yogis, they distinguish nirvikalpa samadhi from sleep. They say sleep is a state of darkness, nirvikalpa samadhi is a state of light. Bhagavan said this difference appears only in the view of the yogi in waking or dream. When you're actually in manolaya, it is a state of perfect light. The reason why to a yogi, their nirvikalpa samadhi seems to be a state of light, whereas sleep seems to be a state of darkness, is the sleep we go into due to tiredness. Nirvikalpa samadhi, because they go into it as a result of a deliberate effort of withdrawing their mind from other things, when they wake up from it, it seems, oh, I was aware throughout. But actually, the fact that they make that distinction between nirvikalpa samadhi and sleep shows that they don't really understand the nature of sleep. Sleep is no different than nirvikalpa samadhi, because all differences exist only in the view of mind. Manolaya means it's a state of dissolution of mind. In the absence of mind, how can there be any differences?
Yes, actually, it is. To me, it's always. It's such a such a. I don't know if because of my English. I just want to say that poor yogis, they make so big efforts, and this state of manolaya in nirvikalpa samadhi is the same as deep sleep. Then what to make all this point?
That's why Bhagavan used to tell. Often Bhagavan told that story of the yogi on the banks of the Ganga. The sole purpose of that story was to illustrate however long but firstly, that nirvikalpa samadhi is nothing but manolaya, and secondly, that however long you remain in manolaya, you don't make any spiritual progress thereby. We can make spiritual progress only in waking and dream. So it's in waking and dream that we have to make the effort to attend to ourselves.
Yes. Thank you very much, Michael. Yes, it's an interesting subject, actually. The only thing I understand, of course, because it's just interesting questions. I just heard that Bhagavan, it was said that because essentially it is dull tamasic state, that Bhagavan didn't want devotees to go in this state. And for example, Kunja Swami was asked to help those people who were in this state to come out of this state. It's just a story about why I'm asking, actually. Yes. So yes,
that is people who are around Bhagavan didn't always understand his teaching very deeply.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much, Michael. And second
Bhagavan didn't discourage manolaya. That is, Bhagavan said, sleep we all need. When you're tired, you should sleep. But but remaining in manolaya longer than necessary is futile. That is, for the yogis, being in nirvikalpa samadhi, that's the highest state, and that's the means to liberation. Bhagavan said no. Before going into nirvikalpa samadhi, you need to send the mind on what he said in verse 14 of Upadēśa Undiyār. before the mind completely, well, what he implied there is before the mind subsides completely in layer, when the mind achieves a certain degree of calmness, you should use that calmness to turn the mind back within to investigate who am I. Then only will it die.
Yes, exactly. Because actually yogis also, their efforts are not in vain when they have such a great concentration, such a great ability to actually they are able to do very serious, very interesting things already. So it's not in vain their job, this work, hard work. But yes, but the main idea is not to go to the layer.
That is all the hard work they've done. They can make use of that hard work only if they turn their mind to this path of self-investigation. If they don't turn their mind to, until and unless they turn their mind to self-investigation, all their hard work is in effect futile.
Yeah, thank you, Michael, very much. Second question, I just wanted to ask whether you know about this story, anything, that Bhagavan was trying to escape, to run away 3 times from devotees because he somehow didn't have this great desire to teach. So maybe you know something about
No, it's not quite like that. That is when Bhagavan was living on the hill, many people were coming to Bhagavan, and that created jealousy in the minds of other sadhus on the hill. And those other sadhus tried to give trouble to Bhagavan. They wanted to get rid of him. So Bhagavan never wanted to leave Aruṇācala, but when he saw that his presence there was creating trouble, he tried to leave. But it wasn't, because it wasn't destiny, he wasn't able to leave. So he wasn't running away from devotees. He was just trying to avoid giving trouble to those who found his presence there. Because for many sadhus, their livelihood depends upon getting devotees to come to them. So when they saw all people were being attracted to Bhagavan, to them it's their loss of livelihood. Bhagavan didn't want to take anyone's livelihood. Bhagavan wanted to cause least disturbance to anyone. That is why he said he did try and run away, but it didn't work. He wasn't able to leave for one reason or another. The details I don't know. But it's wrong to... the trouble is, there are stories with some element of truth in them. And then they get passed on, and people add their own masala, their own spices to it. And then it becomes Bhagavan was trying to run away from devotees. Bhagavan was never trying to run away from devotees. He had no reason to run. He just didn't want to cause trouble to anyone. That's why he tried to leave.
That's interesting, because it was said exactly like this, that he was trying, because he didn't want to teach, maybe he, who knows, and I even built some theory on this, why, for example, because he didn't see other people different from him and so on, separated from him. So that is why I even thought about it. Okay, thank you very much, Michael. Thank you so much.
Even in Bhagavan's lifetime, many of the stories about Bhagavan were incorrect because people see Bhagavan through their own eyes. Now it's more than 70 years since Bhagavan left the body, and now we have this wonderful internet. Internet is a great, the information highway. It's not only the information highway, it's also the misinformation highway. So the people hear stories, misinterpret them, pass them on in a different way. It's like the game of Chinese whispers. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Some 20 people sitting around a table. Each person has to whisper to the next person something. And they have to whisper to the next person what they heard. And by the time it comes back to the first person, it's got a completely different meaning because it gets misheard. So in this way, things are misinterpreted. So there will always be misinterpreted stories about Bhagavan's life. Even his teachings are misinterpreted by people in so many ways. Even the things nowadays on the internet, you can find things that are attributed to Bhagavan. Bhagavan said this, but he would never have said. It has nothing to do with his teachings at all.
Yes.
But fortunately for us, what we can rely upon is what Bhagavan himself has written.
Exactly.
Aruṇācala Stuti Panchakam, Upadēśa Undiyār, Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, Atma-vichara, Ekama Panchakam, a few Anubandham, Upadēśa Tanipākala, a few stray verses. This is what Bhagavan himself has written. This we can rely on, and this is sufficient. If we understand these works, and of course, Nāṉ Ār, if we understand these works, we understand the basic principles of Bhagavan's teachings. Then we're able to read other books of questionable reliability, like talks and so on, and we can judge to what extent each passage is reflecting the real teachings of Bhagavan.
Yes, Michael. So I'm so grateful to you that you do this clarification for us, because it's something amazing. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, Michael.
Someone earlier was saying that about how useful my teachings are. Firstly, I don't have any teaching.
No, I don't say that you have teaching.
Why what I say is useful to people? Because I am relying only upon Bhagavan's original writings. Okay, occasionally I may refer to Maharshi's gospel or talks or some other recording, but mainly 99.9% I'm referring to Nāṉ Ār, Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, Upadēśa Undiyār, Aruṇācala Stuti Panchakam. These are the original works of Bhagavan, because everything, there's nothing, if we understand these works, we can answer any question, because these things make everything clear to us.
Absolutely.
The core principles of Bhagavan's teachings are there. So I'm not actually saying anything of my own. I'm just pointing out what Bhagavan has said here or there.
I understand this, Michael. I'm aware about this. But anyway, thank you so much.
Right.
Thank you.
The two questions. One is, why do I get tears every time I see the picture of Bhagavan or even just thinking of him? I'm aware that it's only his form, but I still can't help it. Why this emotion? Can I focus on his form to guide me within, or will that form be another object? Thank you.
Simple answer is love. Naturally we love Bhagavan, and love produces emotions in our hearts. So we feel emotional when we think about Bhagavan, when we think about his grace, when we see his picture, when we talk about his teachings, and naturally we feel love. And love expresses itself in the form of emotion and tears and so on. Bhagavan's form is not an ordinary form. What did the form of Bhagavan represent? Why did Bhagavan assume this human form? It was only to teach us to turn within. So that the form of Bhagavan, like the form of Aruṇācala, it has a great power to turn our mind within. But what is the true form of Bhagavan? The true form of Bhagavan is not this human form or the hill form. The true form of Bhagavan is that which is shining in his eye. The reason he appears outwardly in the hill form or in human form is that whenever our attention comes outwards, these forms remind us to turn back within. So his outward form is a great help, but we shouldn't continue clinging to the outward form. We should remember what that outward form taught us, right? What he actually is that which is shining in our heart's eye. So rather than clinging to the outward form, it's better to cling to him as I. As he says in verse 8 of Upadēśa Undiyār, Anya bhavatin avanaham ananya bhavameyundi para, anaitinam utamumundi para. Rather than Anya bhava. Anya bhava means taking him to be something other than ourselves. So long as we are holding on to his name and form, that is something other than ourselves. That is Anya bhava. That is good. But better than that, best of all, is Ananya bhava. When we recognize Avanaham Ananya bhava. Avanaham means he is I. So that Ananya bhava, in which we recognize that he is that which is shining in our heart as I, that is Anaitinam Uttamam. That is best among all. So meditating on the name and form of Bhagavan is certainly very good, but we shouldn't stop with that. We have to go deeper. Now, the whole purpose of that form is to push us to go deeper, to turn us back within. What did Aruṇācala teach Bhagavan? he expressed it in verse 44 of Aruṇācala Akṣaramaṇamālai. Tirambiyaham, turning within. Tane dinamahakankan, daily, that means always, constantly, see yourself within the eye. Terium, it will be known. En drane en Aruṇācala. My Aruṇācala, thus you said my Aruṇācala. So that is what, Aruṇācala obviously didn't say that in words. Aruṇācala teaches only in silence. Bhagavan translated the silent teaching of Aruṇācala into words for us dull heads. So the whole purpose of the manifestation of Bhagavan in the form of Aruṇācala and in the human form of Bhagavan is to tell us to turn back within and see ourselves. That is truly seeing Bhagavan. Swarupa Darshana is true Ramana Darshana.
Okay. Thank you.
Right.
The last one is, I am more and more aware now of the strength and pull of my Vishaya Vasanas. They seem to be less pulling when facing problems and disappointments. As a beginner, should I be an opportunist and try to turn inward when they are weak and let them rule when strong?
We should try to turn within whenever possible. Naturally, when their strength remains the same. Sometimes they manifest more strongly. But yes, we want to take every opportunity of turning within. So the less we are being drawn outwards, the more we should make the opportunity to go within. But that doesn't mean that we let them rule at other times. Even when they seem to be very strong, in whose view are these vasanas so strong? Who is it who has so much inclination to go outwards? So whatever be the condition of our mind, we need to be trying to turn within as much as possible. So by all means, make use of the times when the mind is calm and relatively undisturbed. Make use of those times, but don't limit your practice just to those times. Even when the mind is in a turmoil, when it's being dragged hither and thither by its vasanas, we need to try to turn within. Because the one thing that remains constant, whatever be the state of our mind, whether we're in the worst state of tamas or the greatest, most intense rajas, one thing that continues unaffected by all these things is our fundamental awareness, I am. That alone is real. That is what we need to cling to. The more we cling to that, the more this oscillation of the mind will not affect us. So the only way to overcome Vishaya Vasanas is not to be swayed by them. And we can avoid being swayed by them only by clinging firmly to I am. So we should try to do so as much as possible. We will fail so many times, doesn't matter, so long as we keep on trying. If we keep on trying, will it be succeeding at least for a few moments here, a few moments there? So let us just persevere. What is important is trying. Try, that is, what is the sign of our bhakti? The fact that we're trying. If we're not trying, that means we don't have the sufficient bhakti. So, but what is it? Bhagavan doesn't ask us to succeed. He just asks us to try. Our success is entirely in his hands. All he's asked us to do is try to attend to yourself. Let us try and leave the rest to him. He will take care of everything else.